often people lose sight of what they look like. And I think they go back for more and more. And you become so far removed from your pre-existing treatment face then actually it blurs all the bounds of what you should look like.
Right. I'm Susan Yara, and welcome to My Life Online. We're gonna have a lot of fun and learn a lot together. One of my favorite topics is cosmetic procedures, especially when it comes to celebrities. That's why today's guest, Dr. Jonny Betteridge, is so fun to have here because he's a cosmetic doctor and injector. He also is the founder of JB Aesthetics in London. And today's conversation is all around cosmetic procedures, the ones that he's seeing in his office, the ones that he sees or is thinking that celebrities are doing. He shares a lot of this on his own TikTok, but in a very respectful and educational way. And that's what we're talking about. I am so excited to have you here. I have to tell you, I don't get inspired too much by accounts that kind of guess or tell you what's happening with celebrities and their cosmetic procedures. But for some reason, your TikTok account has really captured me. When you talk about cosmetic procedures when it comes to celebrities, you do a really good job of being respectful, not being definitive, and just being very educational about what could have potentially been done, right? And I love that. What made you start kind of doing this?
Yeah, I think because the celebrity industry is one where everyone looks to for cosmetic work. And we often see celebrities in movies, on TV, and we think, how do they look so good? And nowadays, the procedures are so advanced and can be done so discreetly and undetectable, which is obviously what everyone wants, that often people think they haven't had anything done, but so much goes into that from the surgeon's perspective in relation to the technical skill and obviously the money as well. They pay so much to look that good. And I think for me in the industry, it's so important to break down like the taboo. I think we're now in a day and age where, a lot of people in the past may have judged people for making decisions to, do things that are best for them and wanting to look their best. And I think for me, starting at the top, and saying that, these people look this good because they're having X, Y done. This is, can be done if you go to the right people, and it can be done effectively and naturally. I think that's the most key aspect, to these treatments.
I think one of the things you've really pointed out lately is how good celebrities are starting to look, because I feel like we went through a phase where they were looking a little too overdone.
Yes.
Right? And now you're really starting to point out the things that, and some of them surgery, but some of them also non-invasive, these like cosmetic procedures you can get done in a clinic that are really making it more natural looking for them, right?
Totally. There's so many different modalities with aesthetics. I think it's a bit like a stepwise ladder. You've got the facials, laser side of things, Botox, fillers, moving to more sort of like energy-based devices like Morpheus 8, Softwave, and then obviously down the surgical route. And I think there is something for everyone depending on their age, ethnicity, and also anatomically as well. And, in my practice, I'm focusing on the non-surgical side. So the skincare, Botox and dermal fillers. My approach is that very sort of natural, has she, hasn't she, or obviously has he, hasn't he kind of thing. So undetectable aesthetics is kind of like my ethos. That's what I really want to portray online and what I feel I advocate for in my clinic, because I think the general consensus, which I'm sure people watching this will agree with, that fillers and Botox get a really bad rep.
They really do.
Yeah, and I think because when it's done badly, it's very noticeable. As I said, people will know people or see people in public who have that very overfilled, puffy look and distorting the facial anatomy beyond the realms of what they had before. And I think it's often people lose sight of what they look like. And I think they go back for more and more. And you become so far removed from your pre-existing treatment face, then actually it blurs all the bounds of what you should look like.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, what has been the most eye-opening to your viewers? Like, what are you getting the most feedback on when you're educating?
I'd say people are surprised about the celebrities I talk about what they've had done. Even just picking up on the most viral video I did of the Brad Pitt facelift.
Yep.
And I think males getting surgical treatments is like, wow, that didn't think of that. But I think he was someone who, has had such effective work done. He's got into his early 60s, showing, signs of aging. He was someone who previously abused alcohol. That obviously impacts, the aging process.
He smoked.
And smoked quite significantly. So I think he was at the point where actually he wanted to freshen up. And the only way to achieve it in someone like him who had, facial laxity, significantly lower face volume loss and jowling is through a surgical lift. And I think it's really hard in male patients. I've got a surgeon who I know well, George Orfaniotis, who does treat a lot of male patients. And to get that balance between looking done but not looking done is so hard in a male patient. They often just tend to leave the eye area and focus on the lower face, because as soon as you start doing blepharoplasties and removing the excess skin around the eye area, that almost feminizes someone's face in a male patient. It makes it look like they've had work done. One celebrity in particular, I think, has had that is Bradley Cooper. So I think he's had a lift with eye involvement as well versus Brad Pitt, who hasn't had that eye. And there is a stark difference in the result that's been delivered. So I think it's good of a surgeon to sort of think of that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can imagine that the industry with cosmetic surgery especially has picked up a lot with the male demographic.
Totally.
But a lot of these surgeons probably haven't changed their mindset on what somebody should be doing based on their gender.
Very much so. And I think because, speaking about the celebrities that, I talk about, the likes of Lindsay, Kylie, Christina, they all have gone through that phase of having non-surgical work with fillers and being significantly overfilled and puffy and having that, look where it looks very pillow face, like that term, which has become, universal across social media at the moment, which I'm sure you've heard about. And
for sure,
it's being talked about a lot, and about the impacts that fillers have on your face and the detriment it can have when done poorly and to the point where it is overfilled. So I think, those kind of celebrities are great examples of those who've gone through that non-surgical and it's not gone well. I think it might have gone well at a point early on, but they've kind of reached a point where actually they have to get it dissolved and then refill, dissolved. And you kind of go through that process where actually you then lose so much of the natural integrity of your facial structure and anatomy that ultimately the only way to achieve that natural look is then obviously through the surgical route, which a lot of these celebrities have had.
Yeah.
I think I've had, I should specify.
Yeah, definitely. Again, being respectful and just kind of educating on what could potentially have been done to achieve their results,
absolutely.
right? Yeah. You bring up a really good point, because when you point out these younger celebrities, I say this all the time, I'm almost mortified. And I think I'm partially mortified because I feel like I partially contributed to this industry by being on YouTube talking about cosmetic procedures for so long. But I'm mortified when I see these young girls doing so much filler and they're like, oh, they look really great at first because they have these young, beautiful faces that can take anything at first, right? Yeah. And then I can't help but think that they'll have to regret this in the future. Because there's just no way it can continue looking good.
And I think there's kind of like there's two aspects you can look at here. You've got the patient side of things where they're wanting to, restore volume or soften the signs of aging, and the practitioner, and they're going to these practitioners who obviously will give them a treatment plan. Then they start on that process of having their first Botox and filler treatment. Then they get so used to that face, then they go back for more and more. And that filler blindness is a term I like to use often, where, you see your face so far removed from what you were when you started that you almost become unrecognizable, and that becomes your new norm. But the practitioner themselves has a responsibility from an ethical standpoint to say no and say, actually, this is where we should stop. But it's very difficult in this industry. Business, you can make a lot of money in this industry. So it's finding that line between ethics and business building that I think a lot of practitioners fall short. And I think that's why I have, built my business up and it's doing well, is because I treat people with an ethical approach and say no a lot. So that's really key, I think.
What are you saying no to the most?
I think the majority of the time there's patients can fall into different categories, but it's patients who are coming who are already significantly overfilled, wanting more, unrealistic expectations, patients who would benefit more from a surgical approach. That's a really sensitive conversation. And I have that a lot. And I think knowing what I can do in my toolkit and the limitations of what a non-surgical aesthetics doctor can do is really key as well. I think people tend to treat those patients who, need a blepharoplasty or would benefit from a surgical lift. And it's a sensitive conversation, but it needs to be had. And those, we're dealing with patients, a very sensitive demographic, insecure, often body dysmorphic. So it's your face, you have to be so careful and considerate and listen to the patient's concerns, and can you do something to benefit them, or actually would you actually benefit from not treating them? There's a fine line,
right? Because they are your walking billboards too.
Totally. And I think if you do fill patients up, and I don't like to use the word facial distortion, but it is, you are changing someone's face and you're not retaining the natural anatomy. You need to work with what the patient has, and augment sensitively and naturally, not to the point where they look. And I used the term avatar on a video the other day, which people didn't take a liking to, but I meant avatar in the sense of disproportionate features, as in, that's the prominent cheekbones, wide lower face, pointy chin, overfilled lips, and it kind of all combines to looking quite alienized.
I want to know if there's a difference between what we think are probably the top celebrity treatments that they're doing right now versus what you're actually seeing in the clinic. Yeah.
What do you want me to ask the most celebrities on what I see often?
Let's do celebrity first, because I think people really want to know. Like I got soft wave done, for instance, right? And I was surprised there was zero downtime. And I thought to myself, if I were Jennifer Lopez, I would just have this machine in my home and do it every 3 months, you know, like have somebody show up. I don't even have to leave and just have them do this because there's no downtime and nobody would know that I was like tightening up my face, right?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest buzzwords at the moment is the CO2 ablative laser. I think that's a real popular treatment where you've got skin resurfacing. Also Lumecca, which is IPL, so intense pulse laser therapy or light therapy. I think those kind of base treatments where you're treating the skin and trying to tighten the skin, laxity and skin quality, I think is becoming really popular. There's also like Morpheus 8, which is radio frequency microneedling. Not a massive fan of it. I think it has to be done with the right practitioner. I think a lot of people are doing it where they're using a high energy in the wrong depth and you're getting fat, loss from it. So I've heard bad stories about Morpheus 8, but also some good stories. I think it's very much practitioner dependent with anything, with these things. So in the right hands, it can be good, but in the wrong hands, it can be bad. It's the same with anything in life, I think. And soft wave, like you mentioned. So there's lots of different things which I think people will be adopting. And obviously Botox and subtle filler, again, that's a given. That's, universally used, I think. And then combining that with really good medical grade skincare, I think often people forget that. That's a kind of like
skincare portion of it?
Yeah, the skincare portion, because Botox and fillers, it's a bit counterproductive if you're not treating the skin as well. So it's a bit like a triad. You want good skin with subtle injectables and maybe some additional machine-based treatments.
Yeah.
And then, that can also be all surgery and also combining that with, the non-surgical side. I think they kind of go hand in hand. They're not universal by themselves. They're kind of like all encompassing and they complement each other. So I think when you have different modalities, that's often when the best results are seen.
I've seen this, these like Turkish plastic surgeon accounts that like make your jaw drop, You start to really read the actual description. First you think, oh, this was just a facelift. And then you find out later that this was multiple facelifts or like a facelift with like a bleph with like fat grafting to the cheeks with a CO2 ablative, like all these different things.
It's like endless. And you're like, where does this cost go? It's, these things are expensive.
I know.
So, in London for a good surgeon for a face and neck, you're looking at 40 to 60 grand.
I am shocked by these prices.
That's cheap compared to the States, isn't it?
Well, even in the States, I feel like that's expensive. But
is it?
Well, I've heard somebody paid $200,000 for their facelift in the States with a really popular
Dr.
surgeon.
KO's expensive.
Yeah.
He's the one who's trademarked the ponytail lift.
Which essentially is just a
Love
facelift.
that procedure.
Yeah.
So the likes of him and Dr. Giacono, they're charging upwards of $250,000. Even I've had $500,000. Some of it, it's mad money. I'm surprised people are paying these prices, but people have money, clearly.
I don't know who these people are besides celebrities, but it's mind blowing to hear this. But I guess it makes sense if it's your face, but that tells me that they're doing so much more than just a facelift, right?
And I often see the patients who've gone for a facelift who then want to come back for some minute volume restoration. So often post-surgical, again in that mid-face region, I'm often doing even 0.2 or 0.3 in the mid-face just to soften, because sometimes they do have that sort of like dip in this area. So it's kind of like they either go non-surgical to surgical or vice versa, kind of like a bit of a conveyor belt backwards and forwards with that.
Well, you make a good point, because I think people think if they're getting a surgery done, they're just done with the in-office procedures. But I feel like it actually leads sometimes to more things, because you're starting to notice the other things that stand out now, like having volume loss.
I think that also picking up on that is often when people have treatments, they become so hyper aware of their face. And often once you treat one thing, you then notice another. And that's where the slippery slope starts. And that's when things can go wrong. And that's why going to a practitioner who is knowledgeable, skilled and trained and is ethical. I think that's, I emphasize about the ethics of this, because it's your patient's coming to you with concerns and it's how you manage that patient, because you can suggest a number of different modalities. And I hear this on the sad side of things. Patients come to me who've been to clinics with all these different offerings and are given treatment plans in the thousands. And I'm like, this is so wrong. I find it heartbreaking because they spent this money thinking they're going to get a transformative result. I had one patient who spent over 10 grand in a clinic here in London. And she said, I look worse off than when I walked in.
Oh, that is heartbreaking.
Yeah. And this happens all the time. Even not just, in this industry in the UK, anyone can inject and do these treatments, which is again horrifying.
Yeah.
Because in the States, you have to be, from
at least
medical,
nurse
medical
practitioner
background.
or PA at the very least.
So that's also difficult. But there are also, medics who are, doing things inappropriately. So yeah, it's a difficult industry, one that's, booming, but also not for the right reasons.
Well, so people starting out, let's say you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
And they come to you, an average person. I know that it's going to be a personalized plan for every person. But what are some of those treatments that you might start somebody out on in their 20s?
What can we specify what age in the 20s?
Let's say they're 25.
Yeah, that's a good age. Yeah, 25 up. So I say between that 25 and 30-year-old range, they're going to be showing some clear, subtle signs of aging. So we're thinking fine lines, possible wrinkles, more dynamic movement to the face. And also thinking in relation to the skin quality, so how hydrated is it? I think those sort of treatments in that age group, we're thinking subtle Botox treatments. Mm-hmm. So, small dosing to soften fine lines. And I think people often think Botox, your face is going to be completely paralyzed. You can still have Botox and have dynamic movement. So Botox, and again, emphasize on the skincare aspect. So having a really good morning and evening skincare routine, SPF daily, even when it's not sunny, is really important because people often forget to protect their skin barrier. And I think treatments like polynucleotides and Profilo, some more injectable-based treatments, skin boosters, I'd say skincare, subtle Botox, and Profilo or other, skin booster treatments like Sunakos or polynucleotides.
Explain this to people who don't know what those injectables are.
Profilo is the main one that I use. It's kind of coined in the media as the injectable moisturizer. It's very potent hyaluronic acid that you inject into different parts of the face with the main aim of boosting skin quality and hydration. It basically works by boosting collagen and elastin, which are the main matrix of our skin. So it's a bit like a skin treatment deep within the face. Again, really used well in conjunction with a good skincare routine, not as a standalone. Mm-hmm. It's like an adjunct. And I said they all complement each other. So that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, for sure. I got Redensity 1.
Yeah, another really good skin booster.
Kind of similar to Profilo, right?
Yeah, very similar. They have like amino acids, HA in, so kind of it's a bit of a cocktail for the skin.
Yeah, I loved it. I felt like my skin looked very hydrated.
It gives that nice glowy glow. Yeah. Glow's the best. It's not going to change your life.
Yeah,
but it does give you that sort of healthy glow to the face.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. The polynucleotides I feel like are so popular right now.
Yeah.
It's gotten popular on social media as salmon sperm.
Yeah, and I think Kim Kardashian getting the salmon sperm facial. And I think it's becomes those trendy things. And I'm not one to jump on trends. And I think that is one thing that has become a bit trendy. I'm a bit divided on them. And that might be a bit of a controversial opinion.
It's okay. I haven't done it, so.
I was going to do a video on this. I think with polynucleotides, with any treatment, there needs to be clear evidence, clinical evidence for its efficacy, which is its ability to have an impact.
Yep.
There's not been that much research into it. And I think the results aren't necessarily reproducible between patients. So I see some people get quite a nice result and others have had no result. And, a treatment course is upwards of £1,000 in London, 3 sessions. So I feel it's an expensive treatment to invest in when actually, is it going to give you a guaranteed outcome? So there's that fine line between it. It might improve it, but I don't think it's transformative.
Oh, and it's also it's painful.
I wouldn't personally pay that much money for it.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Do you want to explain what polynucleotides are to people that don't know?
So polynucleotides are fragments of DNA. And again, it works by boosting collagen and elastin. So that treatment its sole purpose is to increase skin quality. In the under eyes, it's mainly used. And for patients who may not be suitable for tear trough filler, but again, there's that fine line between tear trough filler or polynucleotides, because tear trough filler is amazing at, restoring volume loss, and it can do, levels above what polynucleotides can do in that respect. Whereas if someone who hasn't got volume loss, you might have some crepey skin or dry skin, that can be useful. So I think it goes back to the patient selection side of things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's good in the right patient, but I don't necessarily feel it's an amazing treatment.
And not proven yet.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So then moving on to somebody in their 30s. And I would normally, back in my 30s, I would have said 30s and 40s. But now that I'm in my 40s, I realize there's a big difference in what's happening to me in my 40s.
So the 30 to 40-year-old demographic are my favorite category to treat, just because I feel they are the ones who get real significant benefits from well-done injectables. So Botox and dermal fillers, because at that point, the aging process is starting to progress a bit more. The fat pads are starting to shrink, getting loss of skin elasticity. And
even bone density, that was shocking to hear.
So the actual skeletal structure starts to shrink down. You get bone resorption, and that's why you get that sort of laxity to the face and the changes in your facial anatomy. So I feel that is a great group who are very responsive to fillers. And I think the volume loss thing is what I tend to target in my patients. So it's disguising shadows of the face and restoring volume. That is how injectables are kept looking natural. You're not trying to augment the face, beyond the point of how someone's anatomy is. You're just restoring. So I loved sort of doing sort of mid-face and lower face rejuvenation with fillers. Typically anything from 6 to 8 mils in a female patient and 8 to 10 mils in a male patient. And that sounds like a lot, but remember, 5 mils is a teaspoon. So when actually distributed across multiple different parts of the face and, done in different planes, and by that I mean at different depths, so more superficial, fat pads and deep on bone, combining those different, fillers in different layers of the face can really change someone's appearance for the better sometimes.
That makes sense. And you're talking about like the right patient, because even though I'm sitting here saying that I'm on like a dissolving adventure, I guess, the journey, there are still the people that will really benefit from these types of fillers, right?
Totally, yeah. And I think it's those patients who, have, good facial structure already, relatively slim. I think, if you have got full features already and you're putting volume in, it obviously can change your face, not for the better. But if you've got obvious volume loss, and in this kind of central distribution, so kind of under eye, nasolabial folds, marionette lines, tear trough as well. And often, if I point around, so preauricular and buccal area, so good at treating that with filler. I think it can, I love doing the full face rejuvenations. That's what's my most popular treatment. And that's basically where we look at someone's face and do targeted filler treatments, anything from, I'd say usually minimum of about 5 right up to even, I think the most I've ever done is 16 mil, but that's only ever once. But I'd say the sweet spot is that kind of like 6 to 10 mil, and treating the whole face, because, it is one structure. So I think also where filler goes wrong is when practitioners target one specific area. So a lip or a cheek or a chin, and don't think of the face as like a global thing. That's how it's kept looking natural. Incremental treatments distributed across the face.
You make such a good point, because I actually cannot think of times like in my 30s when I was getting a lot more of the dermal fillers done where the doctor did more than one area.
Yeah.
It was always just like an area, like tear trough. Or getting my cheekbones, like that kind of thing. Or just doing my lips.
It is, and that's fine. And I do still do a lot of that. But I think often where patients, you treat their lips and actually their chin now looks more prominent, or you treat their chin and their lips look more, underdeveloped. So I think often there are certain areas that go hand in hand, like mid-face and tear trough, lips and chin, nose, lips and chin. There's kind of treatments that kind of are a good packaged together.
So now let's get into women in their 40s, their 50s that are coming to you. When is it that you're telling them, you know what, I think you need surgery?
Yeah, this is a difficult age group now. I think the plus 40s, there are still those patients in their 40s to 50s who can still get a great result from filler. I think when it's done well and targeted in the right place, it can still make a good difference, because these patients do have volume loss that can be treated. But it's when patients who have significant lower face laxity.
Laxity is a word I hear a lot. It's hanging.
It means loose skin in simple terms. Loose skin around the jowl area, around the eyes. There are these patients who, would benefit more from a blepharoplasty, which is upper and lower eyelid surgery, and also more of a surgical approach. So we're thinking, a face and neck lift, a deep plane face and neck lift. Often, we've got different categories. I'm not a plastic surgeon, but I've had experience and, have worked in this industry for a while. So I do have some understanding about it. And there's a spectrum of surgery. You've got, the mini lift, ponytail lift that might be done on younger patients, right through to the deep plane approach, which is more sort of 50 plus. So I think those patients who would benefit most from surgical intervention are kind of like 50s, 60s, I'd say. I think that's the most popular age people are getting lifts. And I think that is when, I'll have that conversation, be like, yes, we can, restore some volume to your face, but your actual concern that you've come to me for is not treatable with non-surgical. And that's why I've got this good referral process with Dr. Orfaniotis, who I refer to for surgery, for even a consultation. Just have a conversation, because not everyone wants surgery. I prefer you not to do filler because I know you're not suitable. So is that fine line of having that discussion? It's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's an important topic to have with somebody for their expectations, right? To set those expectations.
Yeah, I think the managing expectations is one of the hardest things about what I do is, people come to you, with concerns and goals of what they want to achieve. And I think it's important as a practitioner who works in the non-surgical field is realizing what my limitations are, knowing what I can do, and I know how I can benefit you. And if I can't, I know the person who might be able to help you. That's not saying, you need to go and have surgery, but I think it's important to have that frank conversation saying, actually, the only way you can achieve what you're wanting is with a surgical approach.
Right. This happened with my nose, actually.
Did it?
Yes. I was getting it filled with filler to straighten it out a little bit, smooth out the bump. And finally, my dermatologist, after a couple of years, was like, I'm not going to do this for you anymore. And I was like, why? I love this. And she said to me, I think you need a nose job. I think that you need to go get rhinoplasty because...
Okay. Did you?
And I did. Yeah.
That looks great.
Thank you. And she was right. I should have just had, at that point, instead of continuing to come in and get filler in my nose, I clearly wanted this fixed. So just go get the surgery. And I'm glad she told me that, because I finally had the guts to go get surgery and get a rhinoplasty. And now I'm so happy about it.
Yeah. And I think that's another conversation I have is patients who, I love doing nose filler. It's great on the right patient. But in patients who have quite prominent, humps at the top of the nose or significantly down drooping, that's not going to be treated with filler. And often it's better off not to treat. And some people want softening, which you can achieve. But ultimately, in patients like that, again, surgery is often the best solution.
Have you seen a lot of patients come in with Ozempic Face? Because this is a huge thing in the United States.
I am seeing it now more so. Even in the last 3 months, I've seen 2 or 3 patients who've come in and said, oh, I've lost significant weight over quite a short period of time. And they have that, because it does, lose fat in your face and also the muscle as well. So you get a bit of a double whammy. And they've got...
So it's the muscle also that's causing this.
Yeah, they get that sort of muscle wastage and fat loss in the face. And their face ends up being quite drawn and tired. So often giving the face a bit of a boost with some filler can be really effective.
Mm-hmm. I feel like this is one of those tips, I guess, or these things that the celebrities are doing. Christina Aguilera, whether she'll ever admit it, they're all on it. I mean, the Kardashians are definitely on.
Injections, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure, doing something like Ozempic. But they all seem like they're looking really good, hence probably having a little lift or maybe a little bit more volume put in.
And I think with celebrities who've had that significant weight loss and who've been previously overfilled, you need to think, where is that facial tissue going? Like you will have laxity, you will have volume loss, and that is not treatable unless you're getting some form of surgical intervention. That's why sort of when I'm doing these videos, they're looking at the timeline of events of what they've been through previously and how they look now, and realizing the only way to achieve the look they have, I'm thinking Lindsay Lohan, Kylie Jenner, Christina Aguilera, they've all likely had some form of surgical lift, because you can't have that facial appearance knowing what they've been through previously. And that's, why it's often quite obvious to someone who knows what they're looking for.
I agree. I definitely agree. I mean, what are the telltale signs?
Yeah, I think it goes back to having an understanding of the previous history, where they've previously looked overfilled.
Right, in past pictures.
In past pictures, where they've lost weight over quite a short period of time. And just knowing how faces look, because I've obviously worked in this industry, I know what faces look like when they've gone through that process, because I treat them or maybe advise them going for surgery. So having an understanding about similar people who I see who've gone through that process and how the face looks after that, often the only way to make them have that lifted, youthful look is through a surgical lift.
I think a lot of people don't realize that these celebrities, when you really think about it too, they disappear for a bit. It seems like, because it's just like a blip to us, and we don't realize, like, for 2 years we didn't see Lindsay Lohan, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly they come back and they look amazing. What do they think they were doing, right?
Yeah, and I think, as I said earlier, this industry is so advanced now, and the downtime and recovery period is much shorter than what it previously was. So, you can have, even what we call an endoscopic facelift, is where they go in the hairline or behind the ears with a sort of mini camera, and they use sort of more intricate tools to achieve that lift, where it's less of a deep plane approach, but it's done a bit more in younger patients, for example, like the ponytail lift we spoke about earlier, where you have that sort of mid and lower face tightening, but it's not it's not a deep plane approach.
And then are there signs like scars to look for or anything like that?
That's the beauty of it. And that's why people think, how do they look so different? But you can't really know because, these scars are, in the hairline behind the ear, so not visible.
Yeah.
And often very small and heal really well. So often to the untrained eye, you would never know, which is the beauty of it to those who are getting it done.
Yeah, I know. I think people underestimate how good surgery can be these days.
Yeah. And having seen it in real life, I watched a guy in his 60s have a deep plane face and neck lift, and how he looked 3 months after, it was just, he looked 20 years younger. The intricacy and knowledge and skills that you need, these surgeons have been training for 10, 15, 20 years to do this. So yeah, it's remarkable what you can do nowadays.
There are some influencers, even a male one that stands out. I'm not going to name names. I hate when people do this, but I'm not going to name names. But I've heard rumors of these influencers that are in their 40s and they look like they're in their 20s, and they don't talk about the fact that they've had maybe a facelift or maybe 2 facelifts.
Yeah. Was it a male influencer? He said,
Do you know who I'm talking about?
I think so. We can discuss later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with male treatments, particularly the one most talked about one is, Brad Pitt.
Yep.
He's someone who looks, really good for his age. But, if you looked at maybe a few years ago, he did look his age. So that, for me, when someone looks, I think often with these treatments, people obsess about looking younger. But I think for me, it's about looking the best at your age. That is kind of what I say to my patients. I said, whenever they say to me, I want to look younger, I'm like, you are your age, but we can make you look the best for your age. And I think that is what I like to really hone in on when I consult my patients.
I think that's a good message to end on when it comes to cosmetic procedures.
Totally.
Where can people find you?
So I am based in central London. My clinic is behind Selfridges, so near Oxford Street. I run a non-surgical clinic focusing on skincare, Botox and fillers. And I love treating patients from all walks of life, helping people who come to me with concerns and making them feel confident. Like, the impact that what I do, has on people's, way of life, social relationships, work, and all that kind of stuff. It's really rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. And then on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok. It's at drjb.aesthetics. And I try and post regularly, at least 3 or 4 times a week. We all go through those phases of being posting every day if we can. And on there I share, my results, educational advice about, this industry, and also the celebrity commentaries as well, which I think people really enjoy watching. So
this is how I found him.
That's how you found me. So hopefully more of those to come. So if you want to know more, then please come and follow me there.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us on this episode of My Life Online. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to follow, rate, and review, and also share it with a friend so we can continue making great episodes for you. You can also find me on social media. I'm at Susan Yara. And if you enjoy beauty, especially skincare, make sure to check out my YouTube channel, Mixed Makeup. I'll talk to you soon.